Gotta say, I am pretty impressed with my ability to sit down and watch Wicked and not sing the entire time. Although I did sneak off at one point to get the dog a TREAT, and I was singing along while I was at the food bin. But then I came back and I wasn't singing when I came back. So I think that's
Thought I heard that.
I think that's incredible restraint on my part.
You are nothing if not restrained.
The theater kid in me was dying, but it's all right. We made it through. We made it through.
Well, should we make a podcast?
Let's make a podcast.
Hello, and welcome into another episode of Gifted Kid, Messy Adult, a neurodiversity podcast, the show where potential went to die. I'm one of your hosts, Ellie Michaels. I use she, her.
I'm Jessica Michaels. I use she, they.
And today is a very special episode where we're talking about a hyperfixation, the best thing that's ever happened for the
Woo!
next week.
Yes. Yes. And for those that don't know, a hyperfixation is something that often autistic people, but other people, ADHD people, can have hyperfixations, but just something that somebody is intensely interested in for a finite period of time. You hope it's long because you want to get your money's worth out of whatever that thing is, but it is something that at some point will end. But you don't think about that. You don't think about the fact that it'll end because at the time it is your interest. It is all encompassing, and you are positive that it will go on forever because how could something this amazing not go on forever?
Mhm.
And fortunately for me right now, that is a movie. In the past, my hyperfixations have been things like playing the guitar, in which I bought lots of guitar books. I bought a guitar. I spent money on non-refundable guitar lessons, of which I took one and then never picked it up again. I don't even know what happened to the guitar. But this is a movie, and therefore I had to pay for a ticket to go see it, and then I paid for the streaming version. So funds wise, it's pretty limited, which is good.
Mhm.
Um, so Wicked, yeah, we saw Wicked in the theater. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think was it a couple weeks after Thanksgiving? It wasn't right when it came out.
No, it was a week or two after it came out, and it was a matinee.
A weekday matinee.
There was like four other people in the audience. The best way to see a movie.
Yeah. And we saw it in the theater, loved it, loved it, loved it. And then we got a Amazon gift card for Christmas, and I decided that I would like to use a part of that to buy the streaming version so I could watch it obsessively at home, which I have done. And so, yeah, so cost-wise, not bad, not bad. And we had both seen the musical before. I had seen it in Chicago originally, probably, whatever the first time it was when it came to Chicago. I don't know how long, but decades ago. And then you and I had seen it again in London when I was there for a work trip.
Hmm.
Was that the first time you had seen it?
Hmm.
That London trip? Okay. And then you hadn't seen it again since the movie. So I'd seen it twice and you'd seen it once.
Hmm.
Yeah. And yeah, and we saw the movie and it just something about it grabbed me, which was to me interesting because when I had seen the musical, it it wasn't one that I had immediately become obsessed with. Now, I was a theater kid for sure. But there were other musicals that had really taken over my life, where I was listening to the soundtrack, and that was the only thing I was listening to for weeks, months. And Wicked wasn't one of them. There were a couple of songs that I liked, and I was aware of. some of the drama, like Christian Chenoweth, who was in the original, and Idina Menzel, who was in the original, Broadway cast. And, are they getting along or do they secretly hate each other? But from a theater kid perspective, that is nothing. That is civilian, really. And so I wanted to see the movie, but I would like to see any musical movie pretty much. So it wasn't necessarily, oh, because it's Wicked. It was just like, oh, that's something I would like to go see. So I wasn't expecting to be as into it as I was, but something about the movie version instead of the musical version just captivated me. And I really, really loved it. You were not like, I was like a 12. You were like, what, a 7, would you say, on the movie version
Movie version.
right after we saw it?
Yeah, 7 or 8.
Okay. And But we just watched it again, just right before
Hmm.
we recorded this podcast, which was terrible planning on my part because I'm going to watch something that makes me cry and then record a podcast. So my nose is running. Like there's just a lot of drippiness that I really wish wasn't present right now. But we watched it and then we're recording this. What would you rate yourself now that you've been able to watch it again and with closed captions?
8.5. It was
Okay.
good.
So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Um, Wicked, if you are not aware, although at this point we are recording this in January, early January of 2025. It's very early January, which is why I still have my Christmas decorations up. I'm working on it, so they'll be gone, but it's very early. It would be hard, I think, at this point to not be somewhat aware of Wicked with kind of as it has appeared in the zeitgeist. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's even made its way into my weird corner of the internet. Like,
How so? What are you seeing? Memes?
yeah, it's memes here and there, the occasional the occasional video ad. Um,
Hmm. So it's
yeah,
around.
yeah, it's around.
Yeah. And so Wicked is, they say that it is based on a musical, which is based on a book. But I have read the book Wicked, and I'm going to tell any fans, if you are fans of the musical and you're fans of the movie and have not read the book, be aware they have nothing to do with one another, really,
Eh,
for all practical purposes. The Wicked book does have some connection, I guess, to certain parts of the story. There is a witch named Elphaba. It is set in Oz. Um, there is a character named Bach. There's a character named Fiero, and there's a character named Glinda, and that is honestly pretty much it. They do go to Shiz University. Beyond that, there's the book is it's interesting. It's a lot about religion. There are, major religions that are that become an issue. They're factions, they're fighting. There is a lot of politics. There's a wizard. But aside from that, it has virtually nothing to do with what you see on stage or on film. So if that is going to bother you, don't don't bother reading the book. Also, if adult themes bother you, good Lord, don't read the book because there is. I watched a creator who was giving a summary of the book just to sort of refresh my memory, and she did a trigger warning list, and it was a scroll, and it went on. So there are lots of adult themes, and not necessarily in the fun, like, oh, here's a Disney story kicked up a notch kind of fun. There's a lot in there. So it you might want to give it a miss, um, if that is your reason for going to the book. This movie is more based on the musical that they did on stage. It's that plus, plus about 30%, I would say, which is great because I think the stuff that they added, the stuff that wasn't in the stage version, that's the stuff that really got me to really enjoy this movie to the point where I will call it a hyperfixation. For example, Elphaba, who's the main character, the main which they gave her a lot of backstory that wasn't in the musical stage version. So they were able to talk about her childhood. They were able to show why she really cares for animals, for example. And that wasn't really something that was evident in the stage show. And that's so much of what motivates her. So essentially, they gave her what every autistic loves: context. So we got all of this context, which was fantastic, which really helped me understand more of the emotional story, which was great. And they were just able to bring in a lot more elements and slow it down to the point where I was able to catch a lot more of the themes and a lot more things that I connected to than in the stage version, which just goes by really quickly. There's
Mhm.
just a limited number of things you can put in there. So, um, I think that some of the things that really struck me when I was watching the movie, Elphaba really, she has this magical gift that up until the point she shows up at Shiz University has given her nothing but trouble. She doesn't understand it. She knows she's different. She doesn't understand why. And she's got this thing that happens and she can't control it. It's just a part of her and it annoys her. But then she meets somebody at school who says, hey, this can be used for good. So this thing that she has, they call it a power. And to her, it's been nothing but torture up until that point. And to me, that feeling was very similar to, after I was diagnosed and started learning about my ADHD in particular, which I had been very focused on all the problems it was causing me. Because, I mean, you don't run and go get a diagnosis typically when things are great. But as I began to dive into it and I realized that some of the abilities that I have that I love come directly from my ADHD. Like when I'm facilitating, when I'm doing a training and I'm on Zoom and then I'm watching another monitor out of the corner of my eye and we're talking about all the backstage stuff, I'm making adjustments to things on the fly while I'm paying attention to my audience and engaging and doing all of these things. That ability comes from my ADHD. It's like, oh, okay. So, yes, this thing is hard. This thing is difficult to control. This thing is in my life. It's not in everybody's. It's something that makes me different. However, there is an aspect of it that is good, that I can use for good or that is good. And so, for me, that really resonated. That messaging resonated. Was that something that struck you at all, or was that just a me thing?
No, it definitely hit. Maybe not that end of it, of like, hey, this is actually useful and a power and whatnot. At,
The different thing, yeah, that really stood out, especially to me when the kids were making fun of her. There was a scene where a group of neighborhood bullies came up and were making fun of Elphaba because she's green. I guess I didn't mention that. I assume everybody knows, but she is green. Nobody else is green. And they make fun of her for being green. And they later on, there's a couple of times when Elphaba experiences everybody looking at her. There was a time in the Ozdust ballroom, so everybody's at this big party. She's been invited, but she's only been invited to this party as a joke. And parties, I think, for a lot of gifted adults, for a lot of former gifted kids, maybe a lot of autistic people, parties are really fraught because there's something that are supposed to be fun. But I don't recall ever, like when I hear party, that is not a word to me that means fun. Because, there's something about, first of all, you have to be invited. There's popularity thing. It's a group of people who often I don't know. And it's all about these social interactions that I don't quite understand. It's just not something that has ever been fun for me and has often caused a lot of anxiety. So the fact that it's a party, she's been invited, but as a joke, that really struck me as something that would happen to me, that somebody would invite me, but only to be mean and, laugh and make fun of me if I showed up. She
I mean, it
is,
wasn't really like a joke, it was like an attack. It was
yeah.
specifically like, I have this absolutely hideous piece of clothing. I
Mm-hmm.
can't give it away. I don't hate anyone that much. Oh, wait,
Mm-hmm.
I do hate this person.
Yeah.
Let's humiliate her on purpose.
Yeah.
Like that's not a joke. That's an
That
attack.
that is very similar to a lot of the bullying I think that I got in like junior high and high school. I would say that that is, yeah, pretty, I had somebody ask me to dance, ask me to a school dance, and then said they would dance with me, but it was a dare, and then it was like those kinds of things, like, so those kinds of things happened.
You got
So
10 things I hate about you.
I don't know, did that one have a happy ending? Because if so, then no. No. Um, this involved just a lot of, you laugh it off because the worst thing I think you can do is cry. So you kind of laugh it off like, like, of course, I mean, just the whole thing. It's, or they would say, oh, this person has a crush on you, or, this person likes you. And it would be just to mess with you, just to be awful because kids are awful. We're awful. And so I just really felt for her. Like that was a scenario that felt very real to me. And then, so she's there and she's looking around knowing that everybody is laughing at her and that she doesn't belong, but also like she's never been to a party before, so she doesn't really know what to do. So she's doing her best. Like she's dancing, like trying to, I guess, make the best of a bad situation. Like she's there, she's gonna dance, in her way. I don't think there's a plan, but in that scene, that was just so heartbreakingly relatable that it was just, ugh, that it was really hard. That was hard to watch. It was hard to watch. But somebody reaches out to her. Her friend Glinda, who becomes her friend, comes out and joins her and they have this moment and then, that's the beginning of their friendship. And so that was really nice to see. But I think there are a lot of moments there that anybody who has been othered for any reason would relate to, because I've heard other people talk about, from a racial perspective. If you are walking into an environment, or if you're in an environment where you're the only one of your particular, race or ethnicity, then you're automatically othered in a very visible way. For me, my autism isn't something necessarily that is visible. Um, but it's just, I think it's something that can be really relatable to a lot of people for a lot of different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I really liked was the comedy, which I didn't get a lot of in the stage version, which is another thing. I think I don't tend to like movies that don't have comedy to them, especially right now. Things are terrible. So I will only watch movies that are funny and have a happy ending. This was a little bit different. I knew what the ending of this was likely to be, but I was not anticipating how funny it was going to be. I thought that Ariana Grande, who I really don't have much an impression of, and I guess if I did before now, it was probably negative. Um, she was very funny to me, leaned a lot into a lot of the comedic elements of this character that I didn't really see before. And so that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun for me. So she was pretty funny. And I also really liked the dancing.
Hmm.
Is there the choreographer whose name is Christopher Scott is somebody that I knew from a show, from a dancing show, because I love watching TV shows of people who are really talented at things that I suck at. And that is a lot of things. That's, glass blowing. I've watched shows about people who do like stage makeup really well, cooking shows we really love, but also dance shows on TV are another area of like my guilty pleasure. And he has been featured as a choreographer on a show called So You Think You Can Dance that I really love. And one of his associate choreographers, Comfort Fidoki, is also been on that show. She was a contestant and then has come back as a choreographer and a judge. And she is captivating. She's
Hmm.
captivating just as a human being, but then as a dancer as well. So I was really excited to find out that they were the choreographers. And it was really interesting to me. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I am the whitest white person to ever eat a white bread and Miracle Whip sandwich. Like my level of authority in these things is nil. But I do know musical theater. And in musical theater, like the last big choreographer and choreography style that we talk about is Bob Fosse, really, and that's from the 70s. Musical theater dancing has not moved with the times. There was a lot of talk about Rent and it being kind of a modern musical, but Rent came out in the late 90s like a rock and roll type, and it still sounded nothing like the actual music that was happening in contemporary society, which was like grunge and alternative. So music theater is just always at least 20 years behind anyway. And then when Hamilton came out, there was a lot about, hip hop being involved in Hamilton, but that was more in the style of how the musical was done and the music was done. The dancing was more modern, but I don't think it was specifically, that wasn't the focus. That wasn't what people talked about how it felt modern. But this show really brought in so many elements of street dancing and hip hop dancing. Even my untrained eye, could see a lot of tutting, which is where very intricate with the hands, whacking, which is another type where they really focus on arms, bone breaking, which is where they do exactly what it sounds like on the label. They contort their bodies in ways that make it look like 911 needs to be called. It is to the point where it's almost not fun to watch because it's disturbing. It's like, ugh. But that was incorporated just into this jaunty musical that's happening. Animation, which is another hip hop style, which requires a lot of just muscle control and body control. Um, so there were a lot of really modernized dance elements that were involved in the show. So, and even if you didn't know any of that, I think you could look at the choreography of Wicked and go, "Oh, that's different. That's different than what I've seen before in a musical. That's different than what I've seen before in a movie, maybe that wasn't specifically about dance." And I thought that was really cool. And that was definitely a departure from the stage version. I mean, was there anything that struck you about the dance at all other than me nerding out about it?
I did not see a single instance of jazz hands.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And for a musical, that's a big deal. That is a big deal. Yeah, there wasn't those types of elements just weren't there. Your kind of traditional, standard, showy elements. Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Yeah, it felt weirdly authentic. Yes, this is a musical set in a magic college, and we're all dancing around the main characters who are just doing a thing. But at the same time, the main characters were also dancing in a way that synced up with the rest of the background people.
Mhm.
And so it really didn't like I mean jazz hands literally and like figuratively. Like at no point were people just like we're over here doing nothing to kind of be background to the plot that's happening over there. So it felt yeah, I guess authentic is the best I have for it.
I think some of that comes from the fact that a lot of the dance elements were from dance styles that are have come from like street dance, but a lot of those styles were dances that came out of oppression, and so they come out of oppression but also are used for celebration. A big knock on musicals is like, oh, people don't just randomly like sing and dance out of nowhere. But, people do, have always used music and have always danced and, chant and, and danced in celebration. And so some of those dance elements I think were meant to look more organic and they took from dance styles that are authentic to people as opposed to totally artificial on the
Mm-hmm.
stage. So I think that may be why that was something that felt a little bit more grounded, even in something that's literally like over the rainbow, you know. So I thought that was cool. But being able to watch that over and over and over again, there's enough elements of the dance that you can watch it over and over and over again because there's so much happening everywhere that it there's enough to keep going back to and going back to and going back to and things to discover and get trivia about, which is, again, my favorite. So being able to find out more and more and more is really, really cool. And I think is an element often of a hyperfixation. There's just more to dig into and more to go into, and it's not simple. And yeah, so I really love that. Um, I loved when there's a part where somebody tells Elphaba, why must you always cause a commotion? And she says something like, I don't cause a commotion, I am a commotion.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, went straight to my heart because I have been described many times in my life as a wrecking ball. And so, as somebody who is a self-professed wrecking ball, I also like to describe it as a being a catalyst. You described me once as a force. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that was something that I really related to and recognized, which is like, look, I would love to not cause all of this everywhere I go, but I am just a person. You're in my orbit now, and this happens. Stuff just happens. And it happens to me, it happens around me, because I can't keep my mouth shut sometimes. And I know it seems like I cause the things, but I don't mean to. I really meant to just go to a meeting and just have a pleasant meeting and leave. But then they said something and it wasn't quite right. And so I had to, like, mm,
I also wish I were not doing this.
yes, exactly, exactly. And so, yeah, I really felt, I really felt that. Um, And then there's a part where Elphaba sings a song about how, she kind of has a crush on this male lead who's dating the other lead, who's dating Galinda. And, she for a second kind of goes, oh, like this feeling is might be mutual, like, and lets herself for a second, I think, kind of think, like, oh, what if we were together? But then she kind of backs out and kind of comes to her senses and sings a song called, Not That Girl, where she talks about how, look, you know, that's just not, that's not her life. That isn't. There's a person that is for him, and she's not it. And that, at some point in time when I was going through a breakup, it occurred to me, and this was just the way And I think my relationship with relationships, by virtue of being somebody who thinks very differently and communicates very differently, it only makes sense that how I participate in and how I view relationships is going to be different as well. And so at some point in time, I came to the realization that, after watching multiple people that I had either dated or been interested in or whatever, um, who, for whatever reason, oh, I'm just not interested in a commitment right now or whatever it is, watched them immediately go and fall for or marry like the next person. It's like, so you weren't ready for a commitment on Wednesday, but on Thursday was a better day for you. Thursday was the get married day. Wednesday was not, and I was Wednesday. I should have been there on Thursday, which was commitment day. But I came to the realization that, for me, the way it was like, well, you know what? Either you're the girl or you're not. Either you're the girl that unlocks that thing in their brain that the I want to get married thing or the, I want to date thing. And you're either that or you're not. And it's not a question of being better or good, and so it's not a question of could I do this better or could I have done something differently? Was there something that I failed at? Like a test, was I not could I have been funnier or smarter? And it's like, no, you're just not that person. You're just not that person for him or for her. And that made me feel a lot better in some of those moments was okay, it's not a judgment. It's not that you are a terrible person. You are just not that person for them. And there's nothing you can do about that. And so watching Elphaba kind of have that, like I'm not that person, but that just because you know that doesn't mean you don't want to be. And
Mm-hmm.
then she's kind of chastising herself, like, hey, don't hope, you know, because she says, don't dream, don't like wish something, the wish it only hurts the heart. It's once you know that you're not the person, you can go down that road for yourself, that of wishing and hoping and dreaming, but it doesn't help you. It's going to be more painful. Your longing is only going to, so it doesn't make sense to put a lot of brain power in that. And that to me felt like a very logical thought that I might have, rather than leaning into kind of the emotion of that is just, well, don't let yourself do that. Don't think that way because it's just going to hurt you. And so that all, again, felt very authentic to me and really, I think, connected with me emotionally. And, I thought the actress Cynthia Riva did an amazing job at that song. So, yeah, that was something else that really grabbed me. It's okay. It's my hyperfixation episode. So you'll just edit it and it'll just be me talking. You do not need to participate in my hyperfixation like I do. So overall, I think, yeah, so this movie, for some reason, it just, you know, the thing that makes it a hyperfixation for me again is because I get to dig into, oh, there's a movie and there's books and there's a musical. So I can dig into all of these similarities and differences. And there's just all these great avenues for discovering things that then I can share with people. Like today, we're watching the movie and I got to share the fact that Elphaba, that name comes from L. Frank Baum. Elphaba, L. Frank Baum. And to me, a great hyperfixation is something where you can take nuggets of information and hand them out to people. Like, oh my gosh, here's a thing that I get to share. And so this has a lot of those elements for me, which is great. And there's songs which are really good and really catchy, so I will listen to them a lot. So there's just a lot here that have the right elements for me for a hyperfixation, as opposed to just a movie I like. You know, my mother was kind of the same way with Moulin Rouge. She was really into Moulin Rouge. She watched Moulin Rouge. She's probably seen Moulin Rouge 1,000 times, without exaggeration. I think she has watched it for years of time.
Mm.
And so, but I saw it. It was good. I didn't love it, but it was good. And this to me, you know, you just tell there's when something special hits you and it's like, oh, this is hyperfixation time. This had it. This had it. So I plan on enjoying it while it lasts. You know, I'll take all of wring every last bit of dopamine out of this movie. And you know, hopefully it lasts till the sequel comes out next year at this time. And you know, I can see the sequel, maybe get a twofer, which would be great. But yeah, so I'm getting a lot of enjoyment out of this current hyperfix, man. So yeah, so that's what I got.
I love your joy.
Woohoo!
It's the second best thing about a hyperfixation is someone you care about having one, and just you just sit there and watch them radiate joy and excitement for however long it takes, or however long it lasts, rather.
And if you don't want to participate in a conversation, you can just go, "Hey, Jess, tell me about Wicked," and I'll be good. I'm good for a while. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'll just go.
Mm-hmm. Well, cool. Do we have anything else we want to talk about? I mean, I'm sure you do, but
You know, I'm actually thinking of making a long form YouTube video. So, you know, maybe I'll save anything else for that. I'll save anything else for that. But yeah, go see see Wicked. If you were at all interested in any of these things, then Wicked might be the thing for you.
excellent. Well, that'll just about wrap it up for this episode of Gifted Kid Messy Adult. Uh, Jess, where can people find out more about you?
They can go to my website at coachjessicamichaels.com and they can sign up for a free coaching session to see if neurodiversity coaching might be something that can help you.
Awesome. And any other questions, comments, or just outright praise, go ahead and email that to giftedkidmessyadult@gmail.com. So until next time, take care of each other out there.
Bye.